Today on Larry King Now, Fall Out Boy's Pete Wentz.
We played in a bunch of bands together, and Fall Out Boy was the one that like people were willing to pay us in more than just pizza. When the interviews started being more about like tabloid stuff and less about the band and the music, I think that was frustrating for everybody, myself included, but we didn't really know how to change that. It's a misnomer when people get out there and they say like the music business is, you know, hurting, and I think music is more pervasive than it ever was. And something like Macklemore really proves it. It's like people are open to good product and good art.
Plus,
when you're a dad, you just got to get up in the morning and kind of function, and no one cares when they're waiting for breakfast how you feel. And I think that, to me, that's like kind of like the best happy pill there is.
All next on Larry King Now. Welcome to Larry King Now. Our special guest is Pete Wentz, the musician, host, record label chief, and serial entrepreneur. You know him as the bassist and lyricist for the platinum-selling rock and roll band Fall Out Boy, which recently, by the way, got back together after a 4-year hiatus. Pete also hosts tattoo competition series Best Ink. Now in its 3rd season, Best Ink airs Wednesdays at 10 Eastern on Oxygen, a man of many faces and many tattoos. We'll get to that later. How did Fall Out Boy come about?
Well, we played in a bunch of bands together, and Fall Out Boy was the one that like people were willing to pay us in more than just pizza.
Where was this?
This was in the suburbs of Chicago, like where a lot of John Hughes movies were, like Home Alone. Very boring. Like all we did was skateboard and throw fireworks at each other.
So it started there. Then you broke up, right?
We took some time off. Yeah, we did our own thing. I basically went to preschool with my kid. I have a 5-year-old, and got coffee and just kind of like lived as an adult. You know, like when you're on tour all the time, I feel like you're not.
So it
really...
wasn't a bad breakup.
No, it was good, and it was good for everybody to have their own like personal space. And like when we hung out with each other, it was like because we wanted to, not because we were scheduled to hang out with each other. So. And
then you got back together for a tour or a permanent?
Well, we got back together permanently. We always said it had to be about new music. It couldn't be just about like, you know, getting paid in churros this time at the State Fair. So it needed to be about new music. And so Patrick and I wrote some songs together. We had a couple times, and finally we wrote some that were like compelling and seemed like they could be Fall Out Boy songs, and called everybody up and kind of aired all of our issues with each other and moved on.
Now you're the bassist and the lyricist, not the singer, right?
No.
So you're the best known, but you weren't the lead singer. How did that?
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like initially it probably happened because I was more outspoken than Patrick. I think that, but as we've kind of matured as a band, I think he speaks out a lot more now, and I think that
Good.
Probably is evened out, you know, and the attention's probably evened out in a better way.
You said this. I hope this quote is correct. That being in a band is like being trapped in a time capsule.
Yeah.
Meaning?
I think that the way that you are when you're in a band is you're inside this area that like we toured and we would go around the world, and you stay the same, but the world changes and your friends back home change, and the only people that you can really relate to the changes are the other guys in the band. Where all of a sudden you're like playing the inaugural ball, or we're on tour in Japan, and you come back and your friends are a little bit different and the world's a little bit different, but you've kind of stayed the same.
Were there any apprehensions about getting back together?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my biggest apprehension was I'd really come to appreciate just a really simple life, you know, in the Valley in California with my kid and stuff, and it really needed to be something special to go out and do it again and be on the road again, you know, and it needed to be really about new music that people would be excited about.
Now, I hear that when This Ain't a Scene, It's an Arms Race came out, people told you your career was over.
They said,
and that went platinum, right?
Yeah, they said that when we were getting ready to put that out, and this kind of, I guess, instilled in us that we needed to progress, we needed to make the art progress every time we put out a record. But when we were going to put that song out, we were told this would probably be it for you guys. And we decided, you know, like, you gotta be bold or not be at all, and so we decided to put it out anyway. And since then, we've tried to kind of progress our art on every record, or be different, at least.
Did you have any problems with the rest of the band that you were the best known?
You know, I think at first the attention was, like, nobody tells you what it's gonna be like when there's a certain kind of attention. I think that when the interviews started being more about like tabloid stuff and less about the band and the music, I think that was frustrating for everybody, myself included, but we didn't really know how to change that. It's like Pandora's box, like once it's out, it's really hard to change. So I think that frustrated everybody, but I think we all felt for each other. Like I felt for them in the way that I'm like, this music's awesome and we're not talking about the music, and they felt for me because they were like, you're talking about like stuff that you don't want to be talking, you know, like, and so I think it in some ways it brought us closer together, you know.
Is the performance different when you're working in huge arenas and intimate? Because you do both, right?
Yeah. I think that the trick is you want to be able to make like a stadium or an arena feel like it's a small club, and you want to make a club feel like the people, you know, that they're in a larger-than-life setting. And
do the same songs?
Same songs, but do different versions and try to make them more intimate or feel bigger and expand it. And I really think that from watching like the Rolling Stones play like Soldier Field and then play like the Metro in Chicago was really me and us understanding that like a big band can do both, and you don't have to pick one or the other.
You're doing a summer tour, huh?
Summer tour with this friends of ours named Paramore. It's called Monumentor, and it's going to be like definitely our biggest tour on this record.
How big?
We'll be in amphitheaters, so it's our first time since getting back together that we'll be playing these big outside venues.
Artists like Macklemore prove that you can become successful as an independent artist. You ever thought about ditching your record label?
You know, we've had the great experience of having a good relationship with our record label and people over there that really believe in us. I think that
label?
We're at Island Def Jam, which is a Universal label.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it's a misnomer when people get out there and they say like the music business is, you know, hurting, and it's like, yeah, it needs to shift and it needs to change, but I think that I think music is more pervasive than it ever was, and something like Macklemore really proves it. It's like if you have good music, you put out a good album, people are going to be into it no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're on an indie, it doesn't matter if you're white and you're rapping. Like, you know, like I think that people are open to good product and good art.
Can you lead a normal life in a rock band? I mean, you have a 5-year-old, right?
Yeah.
One kid?
Yeah, one kid.
Wife at home?
Yeah, I feel like, well, girlfriend, but I feel like, yeah, I think you can lead a relatively normal life. And I think that I've seen a guy like Dave Grohl, who I'm like, this guy's like the rock star of our generation. And he's like a dad in the suburbs half the time, you know, and I think it's possible to do now more than you could have, like in the 70s or 80s, I think that you were expected to be these kind of like party animals, and now people are open to you.
You don't tear up hotel rooms.
Not anymore so much.
23% of Americans have at least one tattoo. We're going to talk about the tattoo culture and about Pete's show, Best Ink, right after the break. We're back with Pete Wentz. He hosts Best Ink on the Oxygen Network. What made you take that on?
Well, I think that, you know, I do get pitched like kind of weird reality shows a lot, and this one made sense to me because none of those, like most of those don't make sense. You know, like watching penguins tap dance or whatever. Like that's like nothing, has nothing to do with my life. Tattoo culture has always been really something that I've been interested in. I've been, you know, I'm 34. I started getting tattoos when I was 15, which is probably not the wisest thing to do. But I've always been interested in it, and it felt authentic to me.
What happens on the show?
So on the show, we have 12 contestants who are tattoo artists, and basically they'll do one challenge a week where it's just an art-based challenge where
The citizen, just the person, they tattoo them?
Well, first they'll do an art-based challenge without tattooing, you know, and that gives them an advantage or a disadvantage in the tattoo challenge. And then they'll do a tattoo challenge, which is called the ink challenge, and they tattoo an everyday person off the street.
With the amount of tattoos, you watch the NBA, it's Tattoo League,
Yep.
right? Has the public's perception changed, do you think?
I think that the public perception has changed slightly in the way that I think almost everyone I know or I talk to knows someone who has one tattoo or has one tattoo. But I've talked about this a little bit before, but I think that there is a slight generational divide on how tattoos are viewed. I think that, like my dad, for example, my dad is 64, and I think my parents kind of viewed that most people who had tattoos were either served in the military or were kind of in the underbelly of society. And I think,
Are they against you getting it?
You know, I don't think that they loved when I first, you know, I hid my tattoos from my parents at first because I was getting them when I was really young. And I don't think they loved it when I first got them. now I think that they've understood that like I can do my job and have tattoos, and in fact, some of my job is tattoos.
This puzzles me. Is it narcissistic? What is the allure
Tattoos.
of hurting yourself? Because it is painful.
It is painful.
Look at you.
Yeah, it is painful. I would say.
What is the allure of that?
To me, it allows for self-expression on a different level, and every tattoo that I have tells a story.
Do a lot of people get drunk and go out and get tattooed and regret it the next day?
I think people do. I mean, most tattoo artists that I know won't tattoo a drunk person because your blood's thinner, because you make poor decisions, and you don't sit very well, and you'll end up with a bad tattoo.
Who becomes a tattoo artist? What kind of person?
I think it's really runs the gamut. I think it's
failed painter.
No, I think that that tattoo, being a tattoo artist is an art unto itself. That's kind of what we try to promote on the show. Is that color saturation and new school styles and illustrative styles. These are all. It's not easy to master tattooing, and I think that it is a specific person that is good at tattooing, but I don't think it's necessarily somebody who failed in another.
Okay, tell me how you feel about face tattoos.
I personally wouldn't get a face tattoo.
You wouldn't do a Mike Tyson?
Definitely not that, but in general, I don't think I would get a face tattoo. I think that
a little much.
It's a little too much.
Chinese characters.
I personally wouldn't get Chinese characters because if you look on the internet, most people who get them probably, they don't translate exactly the way people think that they're going to translate.
Tattoos on women.
I'm for it. I think that there's something sexy and interesting about it. It's not like the only thing that I find interesting, and attractive about women, but I think
putting your lover's name on.
Bad idea.
You don't have your girlfriend's name.
No, I think that the old.
Bad why?
The old saying is, you get your mother's or your child's name because you will always love and care for those people.
What if you break up and you're walking around with Myrna?
No, you don't want that.
You ever had a tattoo removed?
I've gotten a couple of test sites done, with a laser. So what they do is they'll come in and they'll do a little test to see if how much of the ink they think is going to come out. Because some colors they can't remove. It was too painful. It was about the most.
More than getting it?
Yes, at least 2 times. Your skin immediately boils over it.
When your 5-year-old becomes 15, would it be okay if he got tattooed?
Definitely not. Not at 15.
You did it at 15.
I did.
And not him. So why not at 15?
I think that one of the best things you can do for your kids is explain to them that the things that you went through because of some of the choices you made at the time probably wouldn't have happened if you'd made different choices. It's not going to be just you can't do it because. It's going to be an explanation of what Dad did and how it was a poor decision for Dad.
Why is the show successful?
I think people are really interested in tattoo culture. I think that this show is specifically successful because we focus on pop art and how it relates to the world, and we focus on people's stories. So the story on the show is as important as the tattoo that people get.
Orthodox Jews don't get tattooed. They won't bury a tattooed person, right?
Wasn't there an update for?
I don't know the story, but I
thought there was
remember
I thought there was a Holocaust admissions could still be buried, if you.
Well, of course, they were forcibly tattooed.
Yeah. But other than that,
you know what the religious rub? Are there other religions that have a thing about tattooing? Muslims?
Yeah, I think that they're. Any Old Testament religions, I think, have basically the same stuff.
Defacing the body?
Yeah, have basically the same things. And I think that people can kind of talk themselves around that if they decide they want to. I don't know. I've known lots of friends who are have super religious perspectives and will kind of change them and adapt them for their life.
What do you think about a guy like the Bird on the Miami Heat?
Oh,
he's tattooed.
Totally
for every inch of his body.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it works as an NBA basketball star in the same way it used to work for Rodman to have the crazy hair colors and stuff.
It's a show.
Yeah, it's a show.
Up next, what do Pete Wentz and Joe Biden have in common? Find out right after the break. We're back with Pete Wentz. Fall Out Boy will be touring this summer. Best Ink is in its 3rd year. You grew up on the North Shore of Chicago. That's a rich area, right?
It's pretty well
Glencoe.
off. Yeah, I mean, my parents were the kind of
Evanston.
my parents were the sole kind of liberals in a pretty staunchly conservative. My dad was the dean of law there, and he went there. I did
Really?
not. Yeah, I did not. I
Your
drove by it
father
a
was
lot, though.
dean of law at
Yeah, it was
Northwestern?
for a while. Yeah.
One of the great schools in America.
Yes.
Ivy League of the Midwest.
Absolutely. I drove by it a bunch when I was going to get pizza.
I hear your parents met while campaigning for Joe Biden. Was that when he was ran for the Senate or the,
Yeah,
or
it was
the presidency?
No, it was a senatorial campaign, and
Did you get to know him?
I did not. I was held. I think he held me maybe at a christening. I'm not really sure. There's a picture of me being held by him. I don't really remember.
Are your
that.
parents still fans of his?
I think they are. Yeah. I mean, I think.
Great guy.
Yeah, I think they reminisce, but I think they also like that he's always been pretty progressive and espouses
that he
the same.
is.
Yeah, and espouses the same beliefs.
Last time you were with us at CNN, you were in Get Out the Vote,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. And getting young people to get out, which
Absolutely.
pretty well worked.
Yeah, and I think it's important. You know, like I
Elected
mean,
Obama,
yes,
didn't it?
Absolutely.
How do you think about Hillary?
I think that she is very interesting, very progressive as well, and I think that we could see Hillary in 2016 maybe.
In the past, you have been open about your battle with depression.
Mm-hmm.
When did it start?
Maybe as a teenager. I'm not really sure. It was probably like.
Was there an incident?
No, nothing specific. I think it was like, for the most part, like brain chemistry or something. I'm not really sure.
Millions of Americans have it. In fact, it's a very common
absolutely.
disease.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you beaten it?
I think so. I think I have. In the way that when you're a dad, you just got to get up in the morning and kind of function, and no one cares when they're waiting for breakfast how you feel. And I think that, to me, that's like kind of like the best happy pill there is.
You think the public understands it?
No, not at all.
Doesn't accept it like a kidney.
No, I think there's a like stigma about it probably.
Your son is named Bronx?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Why? He wasn't born in the
He wasn't born in the Bronx.
you name him Brooklyn or
I
Queens.
feel like all those boroughs get a lot of love.
Staten Island.
Right? Well, yeah, Staten Island,
Staten.
no, that doesn't get quite as much love.
Do you think depression is inherited?
No, I don't think so necessarily. I mean, I think that there's all these traits that you do pass on, but I don't think that that's necessarily something that is passed on through genes.
Did prescriptions help?
Not for me, I don't think. I think that for me, it's been getting good sleep, exercise, that kind of stuff. I think that like for me personally, it's been about how I've faced the world, you know, and rather than, and being able to talk to people and.
Were you able, Mike Wallace, the late Mike Wallace, a dear friend,
Yeah.
he went and did interviews while in total depression.
Yeah.
Did you tour while depressed?
Yeah, definitely.
You
I
did?
mean, yeah. I mean, and I think early on, especially before we got back together, you know, you just keep moving, you know, and you just kind of keep your head above water.
Ever suicidal?
You know, I think looking back that I was more so a cry for help. I wanted somebody to, I thought about that kind of stuff, but I really wanted somebody to step in and put my life in order. And then you realize, I think realizing, you know, in my 30s that most of the stuff that I had anxiety about and focused on in my 20s really was little stuff. It was silly, and thinking that the world was going to end or there was something that I wanted, you know, like I think that life is way too short to focus on all of that anxiety or to focus on the negative aspects of your life.
Someone said when they were very old, they said, most of my worries weren't.
Yeah, totally, at all. And it's like I wish I had been able to tell myself that 10 years ago.
At the height of depression, Dick Cavett told me once, when it's really bad, someone could come in and tell you that your favorite uncle just died, or that an uncle you didn't even know left you $20 million, and the news would be the same.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think if I ever got the $20 million call, I think it might have cured me.
But he said when it's really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that when people get depressed or get into their own head, it's hard to do anything to break it, because even that, there's some solace and comfort in being depressed. It's like having
It's a place you go to.
Yeah, you know, and I think it becomes comfortable for people.
Getting better, stay in bed a lot, right?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Never get out of bed.
Do you want to have more children?
I think so. I mean, I think that in life in general, I see myself having a big family. I see myself hanging out, going to preschool more, going to...
Could I marry your girlfriend?
I think that I could see that in the cards.
I mean, it's not a law. You don't.
No, but I do. But like, to be honest with you, I do see. You know, we talk about it a lot, and I do see a future there. You know, like I do. Like, I'm not the kind of person. I think I've gone through life and I've thought like, nah, that thing's not for me. And like, it's different when you're hanging out with somebody who's like your best friend, who you can actually talk to, who you can actually confide in. That's something I can see happening. That's something that is exciting to me again.
Pete Wentz, our guest, will play a game of If You Only Knew after the break, and Pete will take your questions. Stay with us. We're back with Pete Wentz. A couple of things. I want to have some questions for you, some social media questions. By the way, you founded a record label, right?
I did, yeah.
The Cadence? Mm-hmm. What do you look for in a band you sign?
I think that I look for that special, you know, like when you see somebody who you don't know why, but the camera just loves them. You see somebody, you don't know why, but like, they don't have the best voice, but there's something about them that's captivating.
Yeah.
I look for that, like that extra
If it moves
thing.
you.
Yeah, but I also like hustle a lot.
Some social media questions for Pete Wentz. ZoXland tweets, what's the best experience you've had after the hiatus?
We played in this show in Chicago called Riot Fest. There was about 40,000 people there, and the Blackhawks brought the Stanley Cup to the show, and we got to hoist the Stanley Cup with them, and that was special, you know, because we're from there. Yeah, absolutely.
Cubs?
Cubs, Bulls, Bears.
North Side
yes,
Cubs.
Absolutely.
Actually. By the way, do your parents go to your concerts?
They do, yeah.
Avid Diva via Instagram wants to know what your last tattoo would be and who would do it. Do you still get tattooed?
I do. I mean, I think I've slowed down because I have less real estate. I would like...
Someone said one more tattoo and that's it. What would it be?
I think I would have either Hannah or Joe from the show. I haven't gotten a tattoo from either of them. I'd have them, and I think I would get something related to my son. I haven't gotten anything from him yet.
This one comes from Facebook. Kyle Shelton says, I love Patrick Stump's solo album as well as all of the Fall Out Boy stuff. Why do you think his solo album didn't do well?
You know, obviously I wasn't there for his solo album's process. I think that when he went to make the album, he wanted to make one that was entirely from music that was entirely from his perspective. And I think that that's interesting as far as art goes. I've done the same thing before, and it's challenging. It's very few times when that meets up with commercial pop success. You know, like I think we've seen, you know, like you saw a few bands that did it all the time. You see a couple bands that have done it once or twice. But I think that that's not what he was trying for. I think his aim was to make a record that was pleasing to himself, and I think that he succeeded in that way.
At Spaghetti King via Twitter asks, what was your first real taste of fame, and what light bulb went off in your head at that moment?
My first real taste of fame. I mean, I think that I was at some point, like somebody's like +7, you know, like there was like 6 people in front of me going into some club in Hollywood, and that person probably got, you know, photographed, and I probably was in the background, you know, like the little weird guy, and I was like, wow, this is weird, you know, like I don't know.
And finally, Mamby Cheeks tweets, what would someone have to do to meet you after a show?
I'm the kind of person that I think that, you know, I've met a lot of my heroes before, but I want to meet people in the most organic way possible. I think that meet and greets always end up being really formal and like stiff. Yeah, and you know, so if you see me on the street or, you know, at the airport or whatever, come over and say hi. I don't bite. Like, please don't bite me.
And finally, Herbert Howes asks, where would you be without rock and roll?
I don't think I would be anywhere. You know, like I think me watching, you know, Axl Rose and the Guns N' Roses, you know, like Welcome to the Jungle video, I think that like unlocked something in me, or hearing the Beatles for the first time, or hearing Michael Jackson, you know, like that made me feel different and want to do what I do.
Well, we play a game called If You Only Knew.
Okay, let's do
First girl you ever kissed?
First girl I ever kissed, I think.
Had to be near Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I think, okay, so I don't remember their names, but yeah, so in kindergarten or first grade, there was the Kisser Girls, and they would chase us around the playground, and I think that was my first real interaction with kissing. The Kisser Girls, yeah. I was terrified.
Wonder what porno movie they're in. Anyway, what guilty pleasure do you have?
I don't really feel too guilty about any of my pleasures, but I guess if I had any guilty pleasure, I listen to crazy bad pop music in the car, loud and just unabashedly.
That's a guilty. A kid's name that didn't make the cut.
Kid's name that didn't make the cut. You know, I've talked about.
Did your wife at the time like Bronx?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I don't know that there was any B team names. You know, like I don't think. And thankfully, when he showed up, he looked like a Bronx. So I don't.
Did.
Yeah.
Not Chicago, huh?
No.
What worries you? What keeps you up at night?
I think about young people because obviously I have a son, and I think about the state we're going to leave the world in for them. You know, like, and that means like environmentally and everything else, and politically, and you know, and you think about like.
I wouldn't want to be a kid today.
No, I mean it's tough. You know what I'm saying? And with the internet and life moving as fast as it does, like I get to go up to my parents' lake house, you know, every summer and take my son, and it's like it's just a kid being a kid, like hanging out in the water, like doing his own thing. But that's what I think about. You know, like that's what I worry about now.
Favorite tattoo?
My favorite tattoo would probably be this Japanese character that I got before he was born, and it's meant to inspire bravery. I got it from a Japanese tattoo artist, and it's meant to inspire bravery in young boys in Japan.
Band your fans would be surprised to learn you listen to? Maybe the music in the car.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to a lot of like super pop stuff. I listen to MKTO, I think is the name of the band. I listen to.
Who's your favorite all-time band?
Favorite all-time band, probably Metallica, maybe.
Alternate name for Fall Out Boy?
Oh man, there was a lot of those. I think one we thought of was Forget Me Not. I think I don't know. I don't know if you
really
get
Forget Me.
Yeah, I don't know if that would have rolled.
Song you'd be happy to never perform again?
You know, I think one of the things that we've done that we do as a band is when we get tired of performing them, we rotate them in and out. So there's been a couple times when there was covers that we did and stuff that I was like, we could go without ever performing this again. We performed Journey for a while on tour, and I was like, I could go without.
That's a great song.
Yeah, it's a great song, but I was like, we played it so many times, I was like, I could probably go without playing it.
They play it at Dodger games.
Yes, absolutely.
TV show you're embarrassed to admit you watch?
I watched like The Shaws of Sunset, which is pretty embarrassing.
Best thing about being a dad?
You know, I think the best thing about being a dad is that you're able to see these new experiences through your kids' eyes. You know, you're able to, like the first time we've gone to a baseball game, the first time, you know, like we're doing any of these things. It's exciting, you know, because it's so easy to get jaded on a lot of things as an adult because you're like, oh yeah, we do this all. Like even sitting in the car and like we're just talking about stuff on the way to school today, I'm like, you just have like a funny little perspective, you know?
My boys, 14 and 13 now, they both play baseball.
Yeah.
And I remember taking them to their first Dodger game.
It's such a thrill. Yeah, it's such a thrill.
Watching them. Hey, thanks, Pete.
Thank you,
Great
Larry.
guest.
Absolutely.
Thanks to my guest, Pete Wentz. Best Inc. airs Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 Central on Oxygen. And tickets for Fall Out Boy's summer tour are on sale now. And remember, you can find me on Twitter at King's Things. See you next time.